Hi friends, today is June 30th and as you know I have done number of videos relating to US-Israel-Iran war. Right now it's US-Iran war, right? And then you can see how accurate I was with this great science, and then I did 3 follow-ups of my predictions and you can see how accurate I was with those follow-up videos. So I thought let me do a next follow-up where I made a judgment error also, and then it's nothing wrong with this great science. Absolutely, this is the ultimate science of this world, how the world works. So what I want to do is follow up and show you what really happened, right? And I was using, you can see this is the last video I did, and I did this on 7th June, so today is 30th, right? And then on that day I said the following 3 days are going to be bad, right? And actually that's exactly what happened, right? The Israel hit on the 8th, 7th, right? And then the following day military launches strikes, and then this is President Trump's vow to attack Iran. Today also, like he announced it in the day itself that he is hitting on Iran in the night, right? So this was quite open. And then he said the following day he was going to hit as well. But look at that. I had it as green here. You know that these are negative days. This color is negative, right? And then the green is positive, and I didn't expect anything happen on that day. Look at what happened. Strike cancelled. This was in the morning, he cancelled the thing. That's how exactly happens. That is how life works. There is no question about it. And then he was saying earlier day he was going to hit the following day also, but that didn't happen. Strike cancelled on that day. And then after that I said few days are going to be again negative. Look at what happened. President Trump recried the Tehran dishonorable for what he said, right? And then the following day the deal stalls. And then the following day also President Trump wanted to sign it on today because that was his birthday. But it didn't really happen. But they said that was signed on digitally or something like that. But we didn't see any evidence of that, right? And then what happened? Then I said after that there were 2 negative days here, right? And then I said these are positive days. Look at what happened. First positive day itself, President Trump and Iranian president signs the MOU for the peace MOU, and that day he signed it, right? I think he was in Europe with G7, and then he signed it in front of a lot of people, and then immediately after that Iranian president also signed and showed he signed. Look what happened, right? And after that ceasefire proves highly volatile as Israel, and but these are positive days, right? There was no fighting here, right? And then on the peak day of the good time, the high level peace talks began in Switzerland, right? And then they concluded on that day itself, right? So that's exactly what happened. So it was getting delayed. I think Vice President was to go to Switzerland, but he went a little bit later than this, and that's how it happens. It's the final peak of the good day that he went there, and they had marathon discussions, and then I think they agreed the nuclear inspectors to go and see it and things like that, right? And then that they were happy. Following day there was nothing much happening. It's a negative day, but it wasn't much happening on that day. Pakistan was taking the credit for whatever that happened, right? And then the following day, President Trump kept saying Iran made some concessions because Iran really got a good deal here. Everybody believed in US. Everybody believed that Iran got a good deal. That's because of this. That's because of this. Iran was in a much advantageous position with this here, right? And that's how it happened. And after that, now this is where I went. My judgment error. Absolutely nothing with this, nothing wrong with this great science. Absolutely nothing wrong with great science. Because this here, whenever Jupiter is involved with Jupiter itself, you know, it's mysterious. Because my experience with Jupiter transit is that whenever Jupiter comes to my own chart MEP, I find it's negative, even though my Jupiter is the most benefic planet for me, right? So that happens. So it's like Jupiter conjunct Jupiter, Jupiter coming to its own place. You know, general rule is that Jupiter is a really good planet, and that's a positive thing. So I did the same, but I didn't do the homework. I did not check. I did not check what was happening earlier years. You know, I should have done that homework, that was totally research. You know, and then I checked after. I was so upset that, you know, I went wrong here. How in the world that this great science go wrong? Then I was checking, and then I see some negative events that happened in the previous cycles. So these would have been negative ones. You know, these would have been negative and this one would have been positive. It is just a judgment error. You know, it is totally my judgment error. Nothing wrong with this great science. You know, what happened is that on this date, 25th June, Singaporean ship was struck by, you know, one of the, struck by drone from Iran, right, IRGC. And also next day, US strikes Iranian targets, right? And then the US launches more strikes the following day, negative. And the second day of US bombing again, negative, right? So that should have been negative to negative. So this is actually negative one, which I misjudged. That's all. And then look at what happened on the 29th now, yesterday. You know, President Trump says the Iran call him to hold fresh talks in Doha, right? So that is what happened. And then no fighting that day. No fighting yesterday. I mean, today is nothing much happening. It's supposed to be a negative day, you know, but it's a declining scale. Like even here, it's kind of negative days here. You know, so you don't see much of things happening. But, you know, that is exactly what happened. You can see how accurate this is. Whenever, of course, I made a mistake of thinking this is positive, but actually it's negative, because whenever this happens it's negative, and then this is positive, and then after that is few days negative. That's exactly what happened, you know. So that is, I just want to follow up that and show you, yes, my misjudgment here, but you can see how accurate these are. You can see how accurate I was here, how accurate previously. If you look at all my follow-up videos, you know, this is how everything works. There is nothing else outside of this. You know, so this is why this is the update I wanted to do quickly. And I hope this is clear. Anybody can see this is the ultimate science of how the world works. You know, this is karma, fructifying of karma. In this case, fructifying of a karma of a nation. All right, if you have questions, feel free to ask. You know, my whole idea is to show that this is how everything works. And I have done videos on Sri Lanka and US, and I didn't get a chance to follow up because I have been really following up on this one because I know this is absolutely correct. There is nothing about this. Okay? All right. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye for now.